Um, all right, so I'm Spike. You probably know me. I probably send you too many emails, so for that, I'm really sorry. It's a difficult thing to gauge. I'm a journalist here in Texas, obviously English originally. I started a long time ago with a degree in fine art in England. Then I worked around a little bit, shitty jobs in factories, and I got a master's degree in journalism, where I began, which was probably 15 years ago, where I began my journey into documentary. From there, I've been making, I'm probably naturally more of a photographer, but I realized early on that I could double the amount that I charge if I can also write articles. So I began a little career as a writer as well, and that's kind of continued. And then I realized again that I could triple my income. Actually, I could probably 10x my income with the introduction of video. So that's now how I make most of my money, although my love is still in photography. So there you go. That's, you know, diversifying through documentary journalism for the last 15 years or so. I now run Drone as well, as I think you guys probably know, sharing some resources and some of the ways in which I've got to here. That's really fun. That's growing. It's a nice little community. We've got a nice little Slack channel started now, so there's collaboration beginning and people finding some nice wins as well. People beginning to publish through the platform and through the contacts in there. So I got a lot on my plate. I do a lot of commercial work now for the medical field, and then shooting my own stories when I can along the way. So that's me. We'll talk a little bit today. We'll talk a lot about pitching. So I want to talk about the act of actually writing a pitch email. And I think that's what the preconception is of pitching. It's what you write in that email and how perhaps you introduce your work and the mechanics behind the structure behind your email, your written letter, perhaps your elevator pitch, however you're communicating with your buyer or prospect or whatever you want to, however you want to call it. But that's not the thing that's going to land your pitch. That bit's easy. I can tell you that bit. That's a 1, 2, 3 structure every day. You know, that's a dear James, my name is Spike. Here's my story. This is why it's interesting. Will you publish it? That thing is the same every time. The thing that will land your pitch, and that I think people, it seems to be the number one weak point in pitches that I see, is that the person who's made the work hasn't differentiated their project from the field. They haven't found a way of communicating their story idea as unique from other journalists. So we'll talk about that. I'll tell you how to do that, how to set yourself apart, how to frame your work in interesting ways to editors, because these editors that we pitch to, or these producers, depending whether you're, you know, pitching writing, photo, or video, they I don't know how many they receive. I guess it depends on the person, but hundreds to thousands of pitches a day. So we've got to make sure that the idea that we're selling is interesting. And if you guys don't have papers or pens, then get a paper or pen, because if you know, try and write some stuff down, because I won't feed notes back to you. I might feed a replay back to you, but I won't feed notes back to you. I don't have I need to hire somebody to write notes in the chat box for me. Maybe one day. Maybe I'll train my dog. So let's start by perhaps changing the way that we think about who we're pitching to. So all of you guys on here, I'll make a bet, are artistic folk like myself. The reason that I make journalistic work, or the reason that I make photographs or film or even writing is because I'm coming from an artistic place in my heart, or an empathetic place in my heart, you know, making connections with the people I meet. I'm not here or making that work to get rich, because if I wanted to get rich, I would have maybe studied better and I'd be in financial services or something. But the people that we are pitching to are not artists. Perhaps the editors individually are, but the organizations are not artists. They are in this for profit. Perhaps that's unfair. They're in it for profit definitely more than we are. They are not profit organizations. They are profitable organizations. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to marry two idea sets, two motivation sets that don't really fit together. We're trying to marry our art with their need for content, with their need for profit, with their need for clicks and likes and attention. And the way that we do that is by, again, it goes back to setting ourselves apart, making sure our work is unique. If our work is unique, if we can find love in that, in presenting that unique idea, for them, that is also interesting, because that translates into attention and sales. For us as media consumers, because we are all media consumers too, yourselves as much as myself, I'm sure we're all addicted to our Instagram. If you look down your Instagram feed and you see, you know, if each photograph is the same, it'll get boring very fast. If you see a new thing, something different, then it's interesting. You could just scroll that thing for days and days. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. And really, if you need one highlight point at the top of this talk, it is that it's your pitch will land if your work is unique. So that's kind of where we're gonna kind of keep coming back to. And how to make your work unique. I don't recommend to people that they try to find a lucrative story idea and run with that. I feel like if we look deep inside ourselves and look at what we are interested in covering or documenting, and then after that point we try to find we try to niche down and try to find a unique angle within what we're interested in ourselves, then we're in a better place. And then the work is truer to yourself. If you begin from a point of profit or business, then I think for artists such as ourselves, the work loses luster very quickly and kind of becomes boring. So we've got someone joined us there. Hold up. I've learned how to mute people myself. There we go. All right. So what I want to talk about is finding new ways of covering a topic for yourself. And I would probably again argue that most of the topics that we are all interested in pop up in the news an awful lot because they're topics that are always interesting to other people. So we can say from a documentary perspective, for me personally, because I don't know what you guys are into, we haven't met yet. For me personally, I'm interested in climate. I'm interested, there's nothing more important than climate. I'm interested in migration. My work is often directed towards conflict. So Ukraine at the moment is personally interesting to me. Sports, perhaps I really like sports. I like running, I like cycling. So these things will pop up in the media all the time as broad topics. So then what we need to try to do is niche down into these broad topics and find something that's very, very specific to yourself. I'll give an example. In, when was it, 2015, I began covering the conflict in Ukraine. And I could have gone to Ukraine and just said, oh, I'll go and I'll cover the conflict in Ukraine. I see a lot of people doing this, and it's similar with protests as well. But it doesn't work like that. If I come back with images just of conflict in Ukraine, it's much too general. So what I had to do is I had to go and I had to find very niche topics within the umbrella topic of the war in Ukraine. And then they began to sell. And those niche topics were, what happens to children? So children training camps, very niche. Children training camps on the front line, learning to take apart, put back together Kalashnikovs, fire weapons. Another one, how the Ukrainians didn't have drone technology, so how they were using, what do you call them? Domestic recreational drones to fly over Russia to look for tanks. So they had built these ginormous warehouses, and everyone was in ski masks. And there was people in these warehouses, still are probably, modifying these drones for combat use, modifying recreational drones for combat use. So that's a very niche topic again. What else? People on the front line, medics in the trenches. A profile about a female medic in the trenches who volunteers her time to drag dead soldiers out of the trenches. So 3 niche topics under the broader topic of the war in Ukraine. You see what I mean? It's the only way, I think, to sell those pieces, and actually only one of those did sell. But it's the same for every umbrella topic. Gun crime here in the US is a big deal, a very big topic. It's something I worked on too. Many other people have worked on it, but the way I managed to land those pitches, and I landed with so many people. It's such an important topic with The Guardian and The Telegraph and Vice magazine and New York Times, splitting it into pieces again. It's also finding a way of digging beneath the breaking news coverage of topics similar to this. Again, maybe climate change is a good example. Really, really hard to visualize. How do you visualize rising sea levels? How do you visualize the temperature getting hotter by 0.5 of a degree? Really difficult. So you have to look for the people that this affects, perhaps, maybe find a group. So anyway, I'm rambling a little bit there, but I think you get the point. It's finding that umbrella topic and niching it down, cutting it up into chapters, getting as specific as you can. This is a sidebar as well, but the more chapters you can find in an umbrella topic, the more times you can sell your work within that topic. Perhaps you're using the same context for each chapter. So if you go to Ukraine and you sell your photographs from the war in Ukraine, just on that umbrella topic, you sell once. But if you split it and you sell a piece on the nurse in the front line, children in the camps, drone modification, you can sell 3 times. Okay, so yeah, I've hammered that nail a little bit there. But the other way that I think you can separate yourselves from the pack is by using different methods of coverage. By that I mean staying longer, using different equipment, maybe taking more risk, those types of things. So the journalists that we all know and love, I guess, have all exhibited these techniques, I think. So if you think about Christopher Anderson of Magnum, I think he made his break because he got on a boat with some people fleeing Haiti back to the US, and the boat began to sink at night. That's a massive, massive risk. But nobody else had those images. Nobody had images of migrants on a sinking boat. There's also the example of, it's a migrant example again, actually. It's Richard Moss, who's an Irish photographer. And you guys might know him. He started off in Congo, and I think this is what made him famous. And he was using Kodachrome infrared aircraft film. And he's making these ginormous landscapes of the Congo. And the foliage is pink. And all the winding rivers and everything like that are blue. It's really beautiful. But lately he's been making photography again of the migrant struggle in Greece, that he's been using again another aircraft camera, but it's a heat camera. I can't remember the name of it. So it shows heat signature. It's black and white, and it makes these massive images. And actually, his records video as well. So I have many, many friends who make similar work in Greece, and all of their images are similar. They're very good, but you know, it's shot on Canon 5D, and it's people getting off of life rafts with those orange buoys on, or buoys, however you want to say it. We've seen those images so many times, but Richard Moss, with his close-up images of the fear on somebody's face, black and white through a heat signature aircraft camera. There's no other work like that. So that's one example, is using different equipment. Don't feel, I think, that you have to use your Nikon or your Canon just because everybody else is. There's Anastasia Taylor Lind. I talk about her a lot. She's a hero. She makes mostly just square format portraiture on I think it's a Hasselblad she uses still now, Hasselblad with 120 film. So she worked in Ukraine at the same time as me. We didn't overlap. I think we've met once or something like that, but you know, that doesn't matter. I made the mistake of trying to follow everybody else to the front, because that's where I thought the action was. It was where the action was, some action, but that's where all the photographers worked. But she stayed 5 miles back, and as families were evacuating, she'd put up a black backdrop. She'd just make a square format 6x6 portrait of women with flowers, children, old people coming back, injured soldiers. And that work is 10 times more powerful than my own, because I followed the pack, and everybody had the same stuff, the same work. And I don't get me wrong, it's not about the competition of trying to make better work. It kind of is, but I feel like that's a route to a competition to try to communicate somebody else's story better. A competition to try to communicate empathy better. I feel like that's the game we're in, rather than trying to outdo each other as photographers. But I guess it does get competitive. Another way to single yourself out is to stay longer. I spent maybe 2 months living in a trailer, in a caravan with gypsies in North London, waiting for their eviction. And that sold. Nobody had that work because nobody took the time. And this was a group of 400 people. It was a group of 400 men and women and their children and old people. Gypsies, for those of you in the US, are an ethnic group, ethnic minority in the UK. I think they're Romani to begin with, or maybe come from Ireland. They'd probably tell you better than me. And they are nomadic travelers in the UK. And they have a very, very strong culture. And they're normally moved on from communities very fast, because communities accuse them of theft and of being a nuisance and of drinking too much and all these types of things. And maybe they do, but they're persecuted a little. In this case, they bought some land and they tried to put down roots, as I think society told them that they should. And after 10 years, the local council decided they wanted the land for something else. So they tried to evict them and tried to evict them. And the gypsies dug in and they built concrete walls. It was amazing. It was a 10-acre square fort with barbed wire on the top. And inside was just their caravans. It was their homes. So I got in once. I asked whether I could spend time with them, and they let me sleep in one of their caravans, and showed me the secret way in and out. And kind of gave me food a little bit, as much as they could. And in the end, the police came in with diggers and machines and bulldozers, and they had a big riot. And in the end, it was terrible. In the end, a lot of the homes were burnt and the gypsies had to move on. But staying for those 2 months allowed me to spend time with them in their homes while they were playing poker, while they were relaxing, while they were braiding their daughter's hair, while they were taking care of their elderly. And then when all the rest of the newspapers showed up on the day of eviction, because that's what the newspapers wanted, I had a much more hard-hitting magazine piece to publish, because I had the images of tenderness from before that said, well, these are not just people who are stealing from you and getting drunk and making a nuisance. These are people too who have mothers and daughters and whose grandma is sick. And the story did really well. It was a really nice story. It was a sad ending for sure, and nothing was resolved, but at least somebody was there to make those photos. And at least at the end of the day, those photos were strong enough to publish in many places, and I guess kind of bear witness. Another person, this was early in my career, so my photos were okay, but not very good. They were representational, but they weren't what I wish they were now. Another artist that you might check out in a similar vein, who I guess at the time I was emulating, is Andrew Tester, who's a British photographer, and his work Protest. Andrew Tester, Protest, is mind-blowing. He spent years living in trees with English protesters. I think they were protesting a road construction that was going through wild land, and it's all black and white. It's all 35mm film, and it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful. It's so tender. And the same thing, he was there photographing them in the quiet moments before, and then when it all kind of ended as well, when they sawed the trees down and took the diggers through. So that's what I mean. That's another, for me, that is the strongest method of setting myself apart, is spending a long time with the people that I'm covering. I think it's the fastest route to, it takes a long time by design, but it's the fastest route, I think, to portraying that empathy that we need to for this work to land. Wait, let me see what else I want to say about that. I've got off topic a little bit. I think we're pretty good on that. I mean, I don't want to hammer those points too hard. I'll touch a little bit on what to write in your actual pitch email, though. This is the same every time, but it is a necessary thing to touch on. The writers of you who are listening in this group will know the term nut graph, I think. And that is the most important part of your pitch email, is your nut graph. And if you're not a writer, the nut graph is the sentence or the paragraph in your writing that tells your audience why they should care about this story. So the piece of text that tells your audience why they should care. People miss that every time. Writers do it all the time, but us photographers and videographers always miss that, and it's really vital. So the structure of your pitch email, and it's always done by email. This is the only way to pitch now, is you introduce yourself really quick, 1 line, 2 lines, say, for me, it would be, I'm Spike, I'm a English, Texas-based photographer working on migration issues, perhaps, something like that. And then you give a little 1 or 2 lines about your project, what you've been covering, what you'd like to pitch. Just a tiny little intro. I've been following the eviction of Irish gypsies in North London and wondered whether you would like to see the work. So that's your first 2 lines or first 2 paragraphs. And the third is why they should care, and that's your largest paragraph. Spend a lot of time on that. You should write, well, why would people care about the eviction of gypsies? That in that paragraph, that's where you make it timely or culturally relevant to the now. Because this idea that you're pitching, or this work that you're pitching, is you're pitching it today. You want somebody to turn around to you and say, yeah, I want to buy that now. I need that in my magazine today. So you've got to tell them why they need that in their magazine today. So Irish gypsies, I don't even know why I would. I mean, Ukraine is easy to pitch today, isn't it? Because it's happening right now. Most of these timely pieces are quite easy to pitch in the now, but it's also the cultural relevance. You've got to find a hook to cultural relevance, I think. I spent a lot of time in America working on issues about gun culture, really, and it began to tie into school shootings, which is a very dark topic, of course. But I'd see we have them every week here, a school shooting, and a bad one every month or 2. And you see the headline, you see school shooting in, in Colorado, 56, no, that's too many, but 20 dead and 3 injured or something. And we see the headline and we see the number dead and we see a little bit of text about it, but no one was digging beneath it. So I began making stories about the technology that's being offered to school children as a defense for themselves, so bulletproof backpacks and stuff like that. And that led me to conferences where they show these weird technologies and pepper spray bullets for teachers. And that led me to another chapter on it, about a portrait series about teachers who carry pistols into the classroom, which is a crazy thing. And the reason, again, that I'm going back to these chapters is because in linking this work to cultural relevance and the now, this is an issue that is ongoing in America, is gun culture and school shootings. So not to predict a really rough event on my part, but if it's an issue that is ongoing, then why not cover it for an awful long time? And every time one of these events comes up, I can say, okay, I've got work on that. I've got new work on that. I've got a new chapter on that. So so it's making timely work that is culturally relevant as well. That's a huge point, I think. I think still making work on any topic that gets you fired up is really relevant, though. But if it is not in current vernacular or breaking news or in the news cycle, you have to find a way of explaining why it is, of hooking it into people's current train of thought. That's what I'll say on that. I don't have a very good example, to be honest with you. It's quite difficult without knowing what people would be working on. I'm trying to think of something that I've been working on around that. I mean, climate is always ongoing. Anyway, I think you get the idea with that. I won't hammer that one home too much. Time we at? 8:30. It's not bad. That was a good ramble from me, wasn't it? I hope I didn't go too fast. I hope I covered everything you were looking for. I'm sure, well, I hope you guys might have some questions that might be interesting. But I would like to talk a little bit about my membership Drome as well before I open this up to questions from you guys. And I would love a few more people to trickle in. We're growing quite fast, and it's a really lovely place. We've got our little Slack channel, as I was mentioning before, and nice collaborative stuff happening there. And I'm in it all the time, doing portfolio reviews and helping one-on-one. If people have projects that they want to run past me, then I've been doing that with people and helping people push forward their ideas, telling people kind of what's good and what's not working, and then workshopping a little bit with people. So if you have a little bit of spare cash and you want to join a community where we're growing each other's work, growing a community together, sharing resources as well, then that might be a nice investment for you. And it would be a real pleasure to see any of you guys in there. That's my awkward hard sell for you. Has anyone got any questions? Feel free, if you do have questions, you can say it through the microphone, or you can put it in the chat, type it in the chat box.
I have a question.
Shoot.
In your pitches, do you include any images, like a small banner, or do you have like a link, or do you do both? Or how do you like visually hook? I mean, that's what I've been doing, but I'm thinking, am I doing too much, too little? Be good to know what your strategy is on that.
Are you photographing?
Pardon?
Are you a photographer?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
And I do pitch before I go on trips, but I also end up pitching after I've shot the stuff. So it's
good. Well, I mean, that's perfect. I think you should pitch. You should definitely pitch an idea without having the work made, because you might get somebody who will say, absolutely, here's 10 grand, go and make it.
Okay.
Or if you don't, then at least they know you're going to make the work and you've prepped them for your next pitch. But what is true for, it's the same for both photographs and video work. Just a URL link to a portfolio. Never put images in your body of your email. Never do image attachments. Never do Dropbox links. Never password protect. Just a very simple portfolio page for that particular project that you're pitching. And that's it. Really simple. Because if you embed images in there, sometimes they get caught in, sometimes there's a limit to institutional email inboxes. Sometimes if you attach, it gets caught in a spam filter. Yeah, just a web link.
And no password protect. Okay.
No, people get hung up on that. But no one, I mean, you know, no one's gonna, nothing bad has ever happened there with unpassword protected work. And they won't steal it. They won't steal it. I mean, honestly, if they do steal it, it's good for you, because you can sue and make quite a bit of money. I don't that's of course not the game I'm in, trying to snag people with suing, but I don't agree with using other people's material without permission or without payment. So I think a little bit of legal action as a deterrent is not a bad thing, and you know, we're all trying to make some money too. So I had the New York Times steal one of my images once, and I was just too late to sue, but I was angry because they don't treat their photographers well. Good question.
Thank you.
How about anyone else, or are we good? I could do this all day though.
I was wondering, because I live in New Zealand, and so it's obviously kind of a very isolated and small country. So yeah, I was just wondering really about pitching ideas that, you know, like how do you pitch ideas that might be relevant to a global audience from a very, you know, from a small place with a small population?
Oh yeah. Do you mean, is it okay for you to pitch from New Zealand to US for example, magazine?
Yeah, potentially that as well, but also just, I mean, it's harder to find maybe New Zealand, you know, if I photographed a New Zealand story, whether or not it's going to be interesting to the rest of the world, I guess, is, you know, if there's any interest. I mean, you may not know if there's any interest from publications in, you know, the stories from countries like New Zealand, but yeah, it's something I wanted to ask.
I think so. I mean, it obviously depends what you're shooting and who you're pitching to. But so I also think that we can get hung up trying to pitch to the nationals or the BBCs or the New York Timeses or the Guardians. What I like to do and what is quite successful is, for example, if I'm making a story on, let me think of a good example. If I'm making a story on drought in the Rio Grande River, which is close to me here, that story is applicable to national news outlets because it's a US story. So it's applicable to the Washington Post in Washington, DC, whatever. It's applicable to Outside Magazine because they deal in kayaking and adventure stuff like that. It's applicable to the Sierra Club because they deal in conservation. It's also applicable to perhaps fishing magazines because there's fish in there that are dying and have to be relocated. So I guess what I'm saying is, depending on your topic, don't feel that as photographers or documentary people or journalists, you can only pitch to those really big, you know, pillars of journalism. Also look for much more niche publications who are as excited to see new work, honestly, and they also pay. So you know, then you're getting paid 3 or 4 times. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Does that answer?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. That's a tough one though. Yeah, I have the same problem there. But I found that I can pitch stuff. I found that I can pitch stuff from America to England, and it's normally interesting, and vice versa a little bit. So you can jump between the two. And I also in UK stories also pitch quite well in the rest of Europe in different languages. So that might be helpful too.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone else?
Okay.
Everyone else is quiet. All right, guys. I might log off. It's been lovely talking to you though. Look up those photographers or those artists if you can. They'll really blow your mind. Chris Anderson, who do we talk
Can you
about?
give us the names again?
Yeah. Wait, I've got them written down. All right, Richard Mosse, you need to look him up. And Mosse is spelled M-O-S-S-E. Chris Anderson. Anderson, as you'd expect, phonetic of Magnum. You can't miss that guy. Andrew Tester. Also, check out Matt Black.
How do you spell Testa? Testa?
T-E-S-T-A.
Okay.
Yeah, check out Matt Black as well. That guy's a god. And actually, if you want a good example of a writer who embeds for years and years, look up Ted Conover, C-O-N-N-O-V-E-R. He even went to the extreme of, for a book he wanted to write about US prisons, he got himself a job as a prison guard for 2 years, full time, and wrote a book on the prison that he worked in. It's really amazing. All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. You'll hear from me again. And if you don't, you know where to find me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.